Rain pelted against the thick glass windows of the research lab as Dr. Alex Carter finished uploading his daily reports. The weather on Haven's Rest had been terrible for 3 weeks straight, turning the usually peaceful colony into a muddy mess. He stretched his tired shoulders and glanced at the clock on his computer screen. Another 16-hour day studying alien plant samples was finally coming to an end. Alex had always loved the quiet life of a scientist. While other humans dreamed of exploring dangerous planets or fighting space pirates, he preferred the calm work of understanding new forms of life. Haven's Rest was perfect for him, a small research colony where nothing exciting ever happened, and he could focus on his studies without interruption. That peaceful life ended the moment he heard the sound. At first, he thought it might be thunder. The noise was deep and rumbling, shaking the walls of his lab. But thunder didn't last for 30 seconds straight, and it definitely didn't sound like crying. Alex set down his cup of coffee and walked to the window, wiping away the condensation with his sleeve. What he saw outside made his breath catch in his throat. A massive creature lay collapsed in the muddy clearing behind his lab. Even curled up in pain, it was easily the size of a small building. Its scales shimmered between deep green and dark blue, catching the dim light from his lab windows. 2 enormous wings were folded tightly around something much smaller, protecting it from the driving rain. Alex had seen pictures of the Kithara before, but never up close. The colonists called them dragons because they looked like the mythical creatures from Earth's old stories. But these beings were real, intelligent, and normally lived far from human settlements. They had their own cities, their own technology, and their own problems that humans rarely got involved with. This dragon was clearly a female, and she was in terrible distress. Her long neck was stretched toward his lab, and even through the rain and darkness, Alex could see her golden eyes fixed on his windows. She was looking directly at him, and there was something in that gaze that made his heart race. It was a look of pure desperation, the kind of expression a mother might have when her child was dying. Alex grabbed his rain jacket and headed for the door. Every logical part of his brain told him this was dangerous. Dragons were huge and powerful, and this one was obviously upset about something, but he couldn't ignore the pleading look in those golden eyes. The rain soaked through his jacket immediately as he stepped outside. The dragon watched him approach, making soft rumbling sounds that might have been words in her own language. As he got closer, Alex noticed she was breathing heavily, and her scales looked dull in places where they should have been bright. When he was about 10 feet away, something amazing happened. Words formed in his mind, not in any language he recognized, but somehow he understood their meaning perfectly. Please. The voice in his head was weak and full of pain. My baby is dying. I heard humans can heal. Please help. Alex had heard about this before. Some humans could receive telepathic messages from the Kithara, though it was rare. He had never experienced it himself until now, and the sensation was overwhelming. He could feel her emotions along with her words. The crushing fear of a mother watching her child slip away. I'll try to help, Alex said out loud, hoping she could understand his intent even if not his words. Can you show me? The dragon carefully unfolded one of her wings, revealing what she had been protecting. A young dragon, probably no bigger than a large dog, lay motionless against her side. Its scales were gray and lifeless, completely different from the vibrant colors of healthy Kithara. The little creature's breathing was so shallow Alex could barely see its chest moving. He had seen this condition before in his research files. The Kithara were suffering from some kind of plague that had been spreading through their population for months. Their own healers couldn't stop it, and young dragons were dying faster than adults. Alex didn't know much about dragon biology, but he knew enough to recognize that this little one didn't have much time left. My name is Skyweaver, the dragon's mental voice whispered in his head. This is my only child. The healers say there is no hope, but I have heard stories. Humans who can work miracles. Please, if there is any chance. Alex looked at the dying baby dragon and made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't leave a mother to watch her child die, no matter what species they were. Bring her inside, he said, gesturing toward his lab. I have medical equipment there. I can't promise anything, but I'll do whatever I can. Skyweaver's relief was so powerful Alex could feel it like a physical wave. She carefully picked up her baby with one massive claw, holding the tiny dragon as gently as if it were made of glass. The little one didn't even stir at the movement, which worried Alex more than he wanted to admit. Getting a 30-foot dragon through his lab door was impossible, but Skyweaver seemed to understand. She gently placed her baby just inside the doorway, then coiled her massive body around the outside of the building. Even though she couldn't fit inside, she would be as close as possible to her child. Alex carefully lifted the young dragon, surprised by how warm it felt despite its condition. The little creature weighed less than he expected, and its scales felt soft and flexible rather than hard like armor. As he carried it to his medical station, he could feel Skyweaver's mental presence hovering at the edge of his thoughts. Watching his every move, he had no idea how to treat a dragon, but he knew how to use his medical scanners and analysis equipment. If he could figure out what was making the little one sick, maybe he could find a way to help. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had. As Alex began setting up his equipment, he found himself wondering how Skyweaver had known to come to him. How had word spread among the dragons that humans might be able to help with their plague? And why had this mother been desperate enough to risk bringing her dying child to an alien who might not be able to do anything at all? Outside, Skyweaver's mental voice whispered one more time in his thoughts. Her name is Hope. Alex looked down at the tiny dragon on his medical table and made a silent promise. Hope was a good name, and he was going to do everything in his power to make sure it wasn't just wishful thinking. Even if he had to work through the night, even if he had to try 100 different approaches, he would find a way to save this little life. The storm outside was getting worse, but inside his lab, Alex felt a strange sense of calm. He had found his purpose, and nothing was going to stop him from seeing it through. 3 days had passed since Skyweaver brought her dying child to Alex's lab, and nothing had gone according to plan. The young dragon, Hope, lay in a specially modified medical containment unit that Alex had cobbled together from his research equipment. Her breathing had stabilized somewhat, but she remained unconscious, and her scales continued to lose their color with each passing hour. Alex had barely slept during those 3 days. Every time he thought he was making progress, the test results would show something new and confusing. Hope's blood samples revealed a disease unlike anything in his extensive medical databases. It wasn't attacking her organs or her nervous system like most illnesses. Instead, it was systematically destroying microscopic crystal structures embedded in her scales. These crystals were fascinating. Under his most powerful microscope, Alex could see that they formed complex geometric patterns throughout each scale. They seemed to store and channel energy in ways that human science barely understood. When he ran electrical current through healthy scale samples from Skyweaver, they glowed with soft light and generated small magnetic fields. But in Hope's infected scales, the crystals were cracking and dissolving, leaving behind empty spaces and broken patterns. Without these crystal structures, Hope couldn't regulate her body temperature properly. She couldn't digest food efficiently, and her muscles weren't receiving the energy they needed to function. It was as if someone had designed the perfect weapon to target everything that made the Cathara unique. That thought kept bothering Alex as he worked through his third sleepless night. He had studied dozens of natural diseases during his career, and they all followed certain patterns. They evolved to spread efficiently, to survive in host organisms, to adapt to changing conditions. But this plague was different. It was too precise, too specifically targeted at Cathara biology. Alex pushed back from his computer screen and rubbed his tired eyes. Outside his lab windows, he could see Skyweaver's massive form coiled around the building. She hadn't moved more than a few feet from the entrance in 3 days, refusing food and water, maintaining her vigil over her dying child. Occasionally, Alex would feel her mental touch at the edge of his thoughts, checking on Hope's condition without interfering with his work. The trust she showed amazed him. Here was a creature who could easily destroy his lab and everyone in it. Yet she was allowing a complete alien stranger to experiment on her most precious possession. Every time Alex felt ready to give up, he thought about that trust and found the strength to keep trying. His latest test results were finally ready, and what he saw on his screen made his blood run cold. The disease wasn't just attacking the crystal structures randomly. It was following specific patterns, targeting exact molecular sequences that existed nowhere else in nature. This level of precision was impossible for a naturally evolved pathogen. Alex pulled up his communication console and began searching through the colony's databases. If this was an artificial disease, someone had to know about it. Someone had to be responsible for creating it. The more he dug through classified research files and military reports, the more convinced he became that his worst suspicions were correct. A soft chime from his medical equipment interrupted his investigation. Hope's vital signs were fluctuating again, but this time in a different way. Her brain activity was increasing, showing patterns that looked almost like she was trying to wake up. Alex rushed over to the containment unit just as the young dragon's golden eyes slowly opened. "Hope," Alex whispered, placing his hand gently on the side of the containment unit. The little dragon turned her head toward his voice, and Alex felt a weak mental touch in his thoughts. Unlike her mother's powerful telepathic voice, Hope's mental presence was soft and uncertain, like a child learning to speak for the first time. "Hungry," came the simple thought, followed by confusion and fear. "Where is Mama?" "Your mother is right outside," Alex said softly. "She's been watching over you for 3 days. Are you feeling any better?" Hope tried to lift her head but seemed too weak to manage it. Her scales were still gray and dull, and Alex could see that her condition remained critical. But the fact that she was conscious and able to communicate gave him hope that his treatments were having some effect. Alex opened a communication link to Skyweaver's translator device, something he had built to help them communicate more clearly. "Skyweaver, Hope is awake. She's asking for you." The relief in Skyweaver's mental response was overwhelming. Through the lab windows, Alex could see her massive head pressed against the glass, her golden eyes locked on the containment unit where her child lay. The love and worry in that gaze was so human-like it made Alex's chest tight with emotion. "Tell her I am here." Skyweaver's mental voice was stronger now, filled with renewed hope. "Tell her Mama will never leave her alone." Alex relayed the message, and Hope's weak mental presence seemed to brighten slightly. But within minutes, the young dragon had slipped back into unconsciousness, exhausted by the brief interaction. The moment had given Alex new determination. Hope was still fighting, which meant he couldn't give up either. He returned to his computer and began cross-referencing his disease analysis with the military files he had been studying. If someone had created this plague as a weapon, there had to be documentation somewhere about how it worked and how it could be stopped. What he found in the classified databases made him sick to his stomach. Project Dragonfall was listed as a biological deterrent initiative, designed to force the Cathera into productive negotiations regarding their advanced biotechnology. The plague wasn't meant to kill all of them, just enough to demonstrate human capabilities and convince the dragons to share their secrets. Alex read through file after file, his horror growing with each document. The plague had been specifically designed to target young Keythera first, knowing that threatening their children would have the greatest psychological impact. It was calculated, cold-blooded, and completely immoral. But hidden in the research notes, Alex found something else. The scientists who had created the plague had also developed a potential cure, though it had never been tested. The treatment involved introducing foreign genetic material that could replace the damaged crystal structures in Cathera scales. The problem was that the only compatible genetic material they had identified came from a completely different species. Human genetic material. Alex stared at the screen, his mind racing through the implications. The cure would require somehow bonding human DNA with Cathera biology, creating a hybrid organism that could resist the plague. It sounded impossible, but the theoretical framework was solid. If it worked, Hope would be saved. If it didn't work, the process might kill her immediately. Outside, storm clouds were gathering again, and Alex could hear thunder in the distance. Through his mental link with Skyweaver, he could sense her growing desperation. Hope's condition was getting worse, and they both knew she didn't have much time left. Alex made his decision. The experimental treatment was dangerous and untested, but it was the only chance Hope had. He began preparing the genetic modification equipment, his hands steady despite the enormity of what he was about to attempt. As he worked, Alex found himself thinking about the trust Skyweaver had placed in him. She had brought her dying child to a human stranger because she had heard stories about their ability to heal. Now he was about to prove whether those stories were true or just desperate myths. The procedure would require him to donate his own genetic material and somehow integrate it with Hope's biology. If the theoretical models were correct, the result would be something entirely new. a being that was both human and Kithra, immune to the plague that was destroying her people. Alex looked at Hope's still form in the containment unit and whispered a quiet promise. He was going to save her, no matter what it cost him personally. The bond between a mother and child was something that transcended species, and he wasn't going to let that bond be broken by someone else's war. Alex had just finished preparing the genetic modification chamber when the sound of approaching aircraft shattered the morning silence. Through his lab windows, he could see 3 sleek military vessels descending through the gray sky, their engines cutting through the air with practiced precision. Each ship bore the distinctive markings of the Terran Defense Corps, and Alex felt his stomach drop as he realized what this meant. Someone knew about his research. Someone knew he had been treating Hope, and they were coming to stop him. Skyweaver sensed the approaching danger at the same moment Alex did. Her massive head rose from where she had been resting against the lab wall, and a low rumble of warning vibrated through the ground. Her golden eyes tracked the military ships as they settled into landing positions around the research station, forming a perfect triangle that cut off any escape routes. Alex? Her mental voice was tight with worry. These humans smell of violence and fear. Are they here to harm Hope? Alex moved quickly to Hope's containment unit, checking her vital signs one more time. The young dragon was still unconscious, her breathing shallow and her scales continuing their slow fade from vibrant gold to lifeless gray. The genetic modification treatment was her only chance, but now they might not have time to attempt it. I don't know, Alex replied honestly, but I won't let them take her. The sound of heavy boots on metal flooring announced the arrival of their unwelcome visitors. Alex turned to face the lab entrance just as 3 figures in military gear entered without bothering to knock. The man in the lead was tall and thin, with the kind of cold expression that suggested he was used to getting his way through intimidation rather than persuasion. Dr. Alex Carter, the man said, consulting a data pad in his hand. I am Colonel Reeves of the Terran Defense Corps. I'm here to collect your research materials and confiscate the alien specimen you've been harboring. Alex stepped protectively, in front of Hope's containment unit. Specimen? She's a sick child, not a laboratory sample. Colonel Reeves smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. According to our intelligence reports, you've been conducting unauthorized experiments on Kithera biology. Such research falls under military jurisdiction and must be transferred to appropriate authorities. Since when does the TDC have jurisdiction over medical treatment? Alex demanded. This is a civilian research colony and I'm trying to save a life. Since the Kithera became a threat to human security interests, Reeves replied calmly. Their biotechnology represents a significant strategic advantage, and we cannot allow them to maintain their current level of technological superiority. The words hit Alex like a physical blow. You created the plague. Reeves glanced at his datapad again as if confirming something he already knew. Project Dragonfall has been quite successful in demonstrating human capabilities to the Kithera leadership. Unfortunately, their response has been less cooperative than we anticipated. Alex felt sick. You're killing children to force their parents to give you technology. We're leveling the playing field, Reeves corrected. The Kithera possess energy manipulation techniques that could revolutionize human civilization. Their biotechnology could solve food shortages, cure diseases, and extend human lifespans indefinitely. When we attempted to negotiate access to these advances through diplomatic channels, they refused to share. So you decided to hold their children hostage until they changed their minds. Reeves shrugged. The needs of humanity outweigh the comfort of a few alien creatures. Besides, the plague isn't designed to be fatal. It's simply meant to encourage more productive discussions. Alex stared at the colonel in horror. Hope is dying. Whatever your plague was supposed to do, it's killing her. Which is why your research is so valuable, Reeves said, stepping closer to the containment unit. We understand you may have developed an effective treatment. Such a breakthrough would be incredibly useful in future negotiations. The implications were clear. The TDC didn't want to cure the plague, they wanted to control the cure. They could use it as leverage, offering treatment only in exchange for whatever technology they wanted. It was extortion on a species-wide scale. Outside the lab, Skyweaver's mental roar of fury shook the walls. She could sense the threat to her child, and her massive body was coiled in preparation for attack. The only thing holding her back was the knowledge that violence might endanger Hope. You're not taking my research, Alex said firmly. And you're absolutely not taking Hope." Colonel Reeves nodded to the two soldiers flanking him, and they raised their weapons in a smooth, practiced motion. "Dr. Carter, I appreciate your dedication to your work, but this matter is far too important for personal ethics to interfere." Step away from the containment unit. Alex didn't move. Through the windows, he could see more soldiers taking positions around the building, their weapons trained on Skyweaver's massive form. The Dragon Mother was trapped between her desire to protect her child and the knowledge that any aggressive action might result in Hope's death. "The Kethera trusted us," Alex said, playing for time while his mind raced through possible solutions. "They came to humans for help because they believed we were better than this." "The Kethera are naive," Reeves replied. "Trust is a luxury species can't afford when survival is at stake. They have technology we need and we have leverage they can't ignore. It's a simple equation. It's genocide. It's evolution. The strong survive and adapt while the weak are consumed or controlled." Reeves gestured impatiently toward the containment unit. "Now step aside so we can collect our research materials." Alex looked at Hope's still form and made a decision that would change everything. If the TDC wanted to use her as leverage against her people, he wasn't going to give them that chance. The genetic modification treatment was untested and dangerous, but it was better than letting her become a bargaining chip in someone else's war. "You want to see my research?" Alex asked, moving toward the control panel for the genetic modification chamber. "Fine. Let me show you what I've discovered." Before anyone could stop him, Alex slammed his hand down on the emergency activation switch. The chamber hummed to life, its complex systems beginning the delicate process of genetic integration that might save Hope's life or kill her instantly. Colonel Reeves lunged toward the controls, but Alex was ready for him. Years of working with dangerous laboratory equipment had given him quick reflexes, and he managed to lock the system before the colonel could reach him. "What have you done?" Reeves demanded. Alex looked him in the eye and smiled. "I've given you exactly what you deserve. Nothing." The genetic modification chamber continued its work, hope and terror warring in Alex's chest as he watched the readings on his monitors. Hope's vital signs were fluctuating wildly as her body tried to adapt to the foreign genetic material now flowing through her system. Outside, Skyweaver's mental scream of anguish pierced through every mind within a mile radius. She could sense her child's distress, but she couldn't know whether Alex was trying to save Hope or if the humans had done something terrible to her. Colonel Reeves was shouting orders to his soldiers, demanding they find a way to stop the process. But the genetic modification chamber had been designed with multiple fail-safes to prevent interruption. Once started, the procedure had to run to completion. All Alex could do now was wait and hope that his desperate gamble would work. If it did, Hope would become something entirely new. A bridge between human and Kithra that could survive both the plague and whatever other weapons the TDC might develop. If it didn't work, he had just killed the one being whose life might have brought peace between their species. The chamber's status lights continued to flash, marking each second of the transformation taking place within. Hope's future, and possibly the future of human-Kithra relations, hung in the balance of genetic material combining in ways that had never been attempted before. Alex closed his eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever forces might be listening. He had taken the biggest gamble of his life, and now all he could do was wait to see if love and desperation were enough to create a miracle. The genetic modification chamber's warning alarms began screaming as Hope's vital signs spiked dangerously high. Alex watched the monitors in growing panic as the young dragon's heart rate climbed beyond anything her small body should have been able to handle. The experimental treatment was either killing her or transforming her in ways that his equipment couldn't properly measure. Colonel Reeves grabbed Alex by the shoulder and spun him around. "Shut it down. You're going to kill our most valuable research subject." "I can't stop it now," Alex replied, shaking off the colonel's grip. "The genetic integration process has to complete itself, or the cellular damage will be irreversible." Through the lab windows, Skyweaver's anguished cries echoed across the research station. The massive dragon could sense her child's distress through their telepathic bond, but she didn't understand what was happening. Her golden eyes were fixed on the chamber where Hope lay convulsing, and her mental voice was a constant stream of panic and grief. "My baby, my precious child, what are they doing to you?" Alex pressed his hands against the chamber's viewing window. wishing he could somehow transfer his own strength to the dying young dragon inside. "I'm trying to save her, Skyweaver. Please trust me just a little longer." The chamber's internal light suddenly flared brighter, and the humming of its machinery rose to an almost unbearable pitch. Hope's small body was glowing with the same intensity, her scales shifting through colors that Alex had never seen before. The golden yellow of her natural coloring was mixing with deeper browns and blues, creating patterns that seemed to flow like living artwork across her skin. "What's happening to her?" one of Reeves's soldiers asked, lowering his weapon slightly as he stared at the transformation taking place. Alex didn't have an answer. The genetic modification process was supposed to introduce human DNA sequences that would help Hope's body resist the plague, but this was beyond anything he had expected. The young dragon's entire cellular structure appeared to be rebuilding itself from the ground up. Suddenly, the chamber fell silent. The warning alarm stopped. The bright lights dimmed to normal levels and Hope's convulsions ceased. For a terrifying moment, Alex thought she had died. Her vital signs had dropped to almost nothing, and she lay perfectly still on the chamber's medical platform. Then Hope's eyes opened, and everything changed. Her golden eyes now held flecks of brown and green that definitely hadn't been there before. When she looked at Alex through the chamber window, he felt her mental touch in his thoughts, but it was different now. Stronger, clearer, and somehow more familiar than it had been before the treatment. "Alex?" Hope's mental voice was no longer the weak whisper of a dying child. It carried strength and intelligence that seemed far beyond her physical age. "I can feel you in my mind. We're connected now, aren't we?" Alex nodded, too amazed to speak out loud. He could sense Hope's thoughts and emotions as clearly as if they were his own. More than that, he could feel her physical condition, and what he discovered there made his knees weak with relief. The plague was gone. Whatever genetic changes had taken place during the modification process, they had completely eliminated the disease that had been killing her. The crystal structures in her scales were not only intact, but somehow enhanced, glowing with energy patterns that were entirely new. "Impossible," Colonel Reeves breathed, studying the readings on Alex's monitors. "The genetic compatibility between humans and Cathera is supposed to be 0. Cross-species modification should have killed her instantly." Hope slowly sat up in the chamber, testing her movements with careful precision. Her scales had settled into a beautiful pattern of gold and brown that seemed to shift and flow as she moved. When she spread her small wings, Alex could see that they too had changed, becoming more flexible and somehow more aerodynamic than before. "I feel different," Hope said, her mental voice reaching both Alex and her mother simultaneously. "Stronger. Like I'm more than I was before, but still completely me." Skyweaver's relief was so powerful it flooded through Alex's connection with Hope, making him stagger. The massive dragon pressed her head against the lab window, tears of joy streaming down her scaled cheeks. "My daughter, my precious Hope. You're alive. You're healthy. How do you feel, little star?" Hope looked toward her mother and smiled, an expression that was both completely dragon and somehow touched with human warmth. "I feel wonderful, Mama, and I can understand the humans now. Their thoughts, their language, their emotions. Alex and I are connected somehow." The implications of what had happened were staggering. Alex had not only cured Hope's plague, but had created something entirely new. She was still fully Cathara in every way that mattered, but she now carried human genetic markers that would allow her to bridge the gap between their species in ways that had never been possible. Before Colonel Reeves was speaking rapidly into his communication device, reporting the successful treatment to his superiors. Alex could hear enough of the conversation to know that the TDC was already making plans to capture Hope and study her transformation. "Sir, yes sir, the hybrid process appears to be stable. No, there are no apparent negative side effects. Yes, we should be able to replicate the procedure with other subjects." Alex felt a surge of protective anger that surprised him with its intensity. Through his connection with Hope, he could sense her growing fear as she listened to the Colonel's conversation. She understood enough human speech now to know that they wanted to use her as a test subject for future experiments. "They're not taking you anywhere," Alex said firmly, both out loud and through their mental link. "I won't let them." Hope's response came not in words but in a sudden explosion of energy that lit up every piece of electronic equipment in the lab. The lights flickered, the computers sparked, and the soldiers' weapons suddenly went dead in their hands. Even the TDC ships outside began showing system failures as Hope's enhanced crystal structures channeled power in ways that interfered with all nearby technology. What did she do? Reeves demanded, frantically checking his communication device. Alex stared at Hope in amazement. The genetic modification hadn't just cured her plague and created a mental bond between them. It had somehow enhanced her natural Kythera abilities far beyond normal limits. She was now capable of energy manipulation on a scale that neither species had ever achieved alone. Through the windows, Skyweaver was rising to her full height. Her massive wings spread wide in a display of protective fury. With the soldiers' weapons disabled and their ships experiencing technical difficulties, she was no longer held back by the threat of superior firepower. "You will not harm my daughter," Skyweaver's mental voice boomed through every human mind within a mile radius. "She is under my protection and I will destroy anyone who threatens her." Colonel Reeves and his soldiers backed toward the lab exit, clearly recognizing that the situation had shifted completely out of their control. The hybrid transformation had given Hope abilities that made her more powerful than anything the TDC had expected to encounter. But more importantly, it had created a bond between human and Kythera that might be the key to ending the conflict between their species. Through Hope, Alex could feel the love and wisdom of the dragon culture, while Hope could understand human innovation and adaptability in ways no Kythera had ever experienced. "This changes everything," Alex said softly, watching as Hope stepped out of the modification chamber and moved toward the window where her mother waited. Hope nodded, her enhanced understanding allowing her to grasp implications that would have been beyond her before the transformation. "Yes, it does. We're not just human or Kythera anymore. We're something new, something that could help both our peoples understand each other." As mother and daughter pressed their faces against opposite sides of the window, Alex realized that he had accidentally created the first step toward a future where humans and Kythera might live in true partnership rather than conflict. The bond between him and Hope was just the beginning of possibilities that neither species had ever imagined. Outside, the TDC soldiers were regrouping and calling for reinforcements, but Alex was no longer afraid. Hope's transformation had proven that cooperation could create something greater than the sum of its parts. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Word of Hope's miraculous recovery spread through the Kythera telepathic network like wildfire racing across dry grass. Within 6 hours of her transformation, dragons began appearing in the skies above Haven's Rest. They came from every direction, their massive wings casting moving shadows across the research station as they circled overhead, before landing in the surrounding fields. Alex stood at his lab window, watching in amazement as more and more dragons arrived. Some carried bundles in their claws that could only be their own sick children. Others came alone, drawn by curiosity about the impossible cure that had saved one of their young. By evening, nearly 50 adult Kythera had gathered around the small research colony, turning it into something that resembled a dragon council meeting. Hope had grown stronger throughout the day, her hybrid vigor allowing her to recover from the genetic modification process far faster than Alex had expected. She now served as a translator between the arriving dragons and the few humans brave enough to remain at the station. Most of the research staff had fled when the military ships arrived, but a handful of scientists had stayed to witness what they recognized as a historic moment. "They're all asking the same question," Hope explained to Alex as she relayed the mental conversations flowing between the assembled dragons. "They want to know if you can help their children too." Alex looked at the scan results from the 3 young dragons he had examined that afternoon. All of them showed the same systematic destruction of their scale crystals that had nearly killed Hope. The plague was spreading faster than he had realized, and time was running out for an entire generation of Kythera children. "The process is dangerous," Alex told Hope, knowing she would relay his words to the other dragons. "What happened with you was experimental. We don't know if it will work the same way with other children, or if there might be side effects we haven't discovered yet." Hope's golden brown eyes met his with an understanding that seemed far beyond her apparent age. "They know the risks, Alex, but their children are dying. Without treatment, they'll all be gone within a few weeks. Even a dangerous chance is better than no chance at all." Through his mental connection with Hope, Alex could feel the desperate love of dozens of dragon parents. Their emotions were overwhelming: grief for children they had already lost, terror for those still fighting the plague, and a fragile hope that the human who had saved one life might be able to save others. Skyweaver approached the lab window, carrying a young dragon that looked even sicker than Hope had been. This one's scales were almost completely gray, and its breathing was so shallow Alex could barely detect movement in its small chest. "This is my nephew, Storm." Skyweaver's mental voice was heavy with sorrow. "His parents died of the plague last week. He's the last of their line, and he won't survive another day without help." Alex looked at the dying child and felt his heart break. The genetic modification process had nearly killed Hope, and she had been in much better condition than Storm appeared to be. But how could he turn away a child who would certainly die without intervention? "Bring him inside," Alex said quietly. "I'll do what I can." The next few hours blurred together in a desperate race against time. Alex had learned from Hope's treatment, refining his procedures and adjusting the genetic sequences to account for Storm's weaker condition. Hope stayed by his side throughout the process, her hybrid abilities allowing her to monitor Storm's vital signs in ways that Alex's equipment couldn't match. The transformation was even more dramatic than Hope's had been. Storm's scales shifted through impossible colors before settling into a pattern of silver and deep blue that seemed to capture starlight. When his eyes opened, they held the same brown flecks that marked Hope's hybrid nature. But more importantly, Storm survived. Not only survived, but emerged from the process stronger and healthier than he had been since before the plague began. Like Hope, he carried new abilities that combined Kithara energy manipulation with human adaptability and resilience. "I can feel both of you now," Storm said through the mental link that connected all three of them. "Alex, Hope, and something more. We're part of something bigger, aren't we?" Alex nodded, beginning to understand what was happening. Each successful transformation wasn't just creating individual hybrids, it was building a network of connected consciousness that bridged the gap between human and Kithara understanding. Through Hope and Storm, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of every dragon in the gathered assembly. Word of Storm's successful treatment spread through the telepathic network, even faster than news of Hope's recovery had. More dragons began arriving hourly, some traveling for days to bring their sick children to the human who could perform miracles. Alex worked through the night and into the next day, treating child after child with the genetic modification process. Each transformation was unique, creating hybrid patterns and abilities that were tailored to the individual young dragon's needs and personality. But they all shared the same core characteristics: immunity to the plague, enhanced abilities, and connection to the growing network of hybrid consciousness. By the end of the second day, Alex had successfully treated 12 young dragons. Each one emerged from the process healthy and changed, carrying pieces of human genetic material that made them bridges between the two species. The network of connected minds was growing stronger with each addition, creating something that was entirely new in the galaxy. Colonel Reeves had returned with reinforcements, but the TDC soldiers found themselves facing a very different situation than they had expected. The assembled dragons were no longer desperate and vulnerable. They were organized, determined, and protected by children who possessed abilities that made conventional weapons useless. "Dr. Carter," Reeves called out through a portable speaker system, "we need to discuss the implications of what you're doing here. These genetic modifications could have serious consequences for human security." Alex looked up from his latest patient, a young dragon named Wind, who was just beginning to show signs of recovery. Through the network connection, he could feel the collective opinion of every hybrid child and their families. They were no longer afraid of the humans or their weapons. They were prepared to defend their transformed children with everything they had. "The only security threat here is the plague you created," Alex replied. "I'm fixing your mistake, one child at a time." Hope approached the window where Reeves could see her, her hybrid features clearly visible in the afternoon light. When she spoke, her words carried through the speaker system with perfect clarity. "Colonel Reeves, my name is Hope. I am the first human Kithara hybrid, and I speak for all the children who have been transformed. We are not weapons to be controlled or studied. We are the future of both our species, and we choose cooperation over conflict." The simple dignity in her voice carried more authority than all of Reeves's military rank and equipment. Through the network, Alex could feel the other hybrid children adding their mental voices to Hope's declaration. They were united in their desire for peace, but they were also prepared to defend themselves if necessary. Skyweaver rose to her full height behind Hope, her massive form casting a shadow over the entire research station. "The children speak truth, human. They offer your species something precious, the chance to grow beyond your current limitations. Whether you accept that gift or try to destroy it will determine the future of human-Kithera relations." Alex realized that the situation had evolved far beyond his original goal of saving a single life. The hybrid children represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Beings who could truly understand both human and Kithera perspectives, who could serve as bridges between species that had never successfully communicated before. The network was still growing, and with each new hybrid child, the possibilities for cooperation and mutual understanding expanded. What had started as one mother's desperate attempt to save her dying baby had become the foundation for a new kind of interspecies relationship. As the sun set over Haven's Rest, Alex looked out at the gathered dragons and felt something he had never experienced before. The sense that he was part of something larger than himself, connected to beings who shared his commitment to healing and growth rather than conquest and control. 4 months after Skyweaver first brought her dying child to his laboratory, Alex stood in the center of what had once been a simple research station and marveled at how completely everything had changed. Haven's Rest had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a true multi-species colony where humans and Kithera lived and worked together as equals. The hybrid children, now numbering 43, moved freely between the human residential areas and the dragon nesting grounds that had been constructed in the surrounding hills. Their unique abilities and perspectives had already led to technological breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. Hope, as the first and oldest of the hybrids, had become their unofficial leader and primary spokesperson. Alex watched through his office window as Hope worked with a group of human engineers and adult dragons to design a new type of energy storage system. Her hybrid nature allowed her to understand both human engineering principles and Kithera biocrystalline technology, creating solutions that combined the best of both approaches. The integration continues to exceed all projections, Dr. Sarah Martinez reported as she reviewed the latest development statistics. She was one of the few original research staff who had stayed throughout the transformation, and her studies of the hybrid children had revolutionized understanding of genetic compatibility between species. "They're not just healthy," Sarah continued. "They're thriving in ways that suggest the hybrid process unlocked potential that was already present in both species. Their cognitive development, their physical capabilities, their social integration, everything is progressing at rates that our models said were impossible." Alex nodded, still amazed by what they had accomplished. The genetic modification process had become safer and more refined with each treatment, but the results continued to exceed his wildest expectations. The hybrid children weren't weakened by their dual nature. They were enhanced by it, possessing abilities and insights that made them natural bridges between human and Kithera cultures. A soft chime from his communication system interrupted his thoughts. Admiral Torres appeared on the screen, her expression serious but not hostile. The TDC had undergone significant leadership changes after the exposure of Project Dragonfall, and the new administration was taking a very different approach to human-Kithera relations. "Dr. Carter, I wanted to personally thank you for your cooperation during our investigation of Colonel Reeves and his team. The evidence you provided has led to the complete shutdown of the biological weapons program and significant reforms in our xenological protocols." Alex leaned back in his chair, remembering the tense weeks when TDC investigators had descended on Haven's Rest to document the crimes committed by the previous administration. The hybrid children had been instrumental in providing testimony about the plague's effects, their unique perspectives helping to build an ironclad case against those responsible. "What's the status of the reparations program?" Alex asked. "The Kithera Council of Winds has agreed to accept our formal apology and the medical aid package we've proposed. More importantly, they've invited human representatives to participate in joint research initiatives. Your hybrid children have convinced them that our species can work together productively when we approach each other with respect rather than fear." Through his mental connection with the hybrid network, Alex could feel Hope and the other children's satisfaction at this news. They had spent months serving as ambassadors between the species, using their unique abilities to facilitate understanding and cooperation. "There's something else," Admiral Torres continued. The hybrid children have requested permission to establish similar communities on other worlds. They want to create a network of multi-species colonies that could serve as examples of peaceful coexistence. Alex smiled. The children had been discussing this possibility for weeks. Their hybrid consciousness naturally thinking in terms of expansion and growth, rather than isolation and conflict. They saw themselves not as unique anomalies, but as the first generation of a new kind of being that could help transform galactic civilization. "I think that's an excellent idea," Alex replied. "But the decision should be theirs to make. They're not children anymore despite their physical age. Their hybrid nature has given them wisdom and capabilities that allow them to make these choices for themselves." After ending the communication, Alex walked outside to join the afternoon gathering that had become a daily tradition in the colony. Humans and dragons came together each day to share news, discuss plans, and simply enjoy each other's company. The language barriers that had once seemed insurmountable had dissolved as more humans learned to receive telepathic communication, and the hybrid children served as translators for complex concepts. Hope approached him, her scales now showing the full maturity of her hybrid development. At 4 months old, she had the physical size of a yearling dragon but the mental capabilities of a being far older than her apparent age. The genetic modification process had accelerated not just her recovery from the plague, but her overall development in ways that continued to amaze the researchers studying her. "Alex, we've been talking about something important," Hope said, her mental voice carrying the weight of serious consideration. "The network is strong enough now to attempt something that could change everything." Alex felt a flutter of anticipation through their connection. The hybrid children had been working on several projects that pushed the boundaries of what either species thought possible, but this felt different, bigger. "We think we can cure the plague in adult Kithra too," Hope continued. "Not through genetic modification, but through network amplification. If we work together, we can use our hybrid abilities to strengthen the crystal structures in adult dragons, making them immune to the bioweapon without changing their fundamental nature." The implications were staggering. If the hybrid children could cure adult dragons without transforming them, it would eliminate the plague completely while preserving Kithara biological integrity. More importantly, it would demonstrate that the hybrids were not just bridges between species, but healers capable of solving problems that had seemed impossible. "When do you want to attempt this?" Alex asked. "Tomorrow," Hope replied. "Skyweaver has volunteered to be our first test subject. She wants to make sure the process is safe before we try it with other adults." Alex looked across the gathering to where Skyweaver was deep in conversation with a group of human doctors and Kithara healers. The massive dragon had become one of the strongest advocates for human-Kithara cooperation, using her influence among her people to build support for the hybrid children's initiatives. "Are you sure you're ready for something this ambitious?" Alex asked. Hope's response came not just from her, but from the entire network of hybrid consciousness. 43 young voices speaking in perfect unity. "We were born ready. This is what we were meant to do." As the twin suns of Haven's Rest began to set, Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction wash over him. What had started as one desperate mother's plea for help had evolved into something that could reshape the entire galaxy. The hybrid children represented proof that cooperation could create something greater than the sum of its parts, that understanding could triumph over fear, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to build bridges rather than walls. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new possibilities. But tonight, surrounded by the mental harmony of dragons and humans learning to think as one, Alex knew they had created something truly extraordinary. The age of isolated species was ending, and the age of synthesis had begun. The weeping mother dragon who had carried her dying cub to his laboratory door had given him more than just a patient to heal. She had given him the chance to help birth a new kind of life, one that might just save not only the Kithara, but humanity as well. As Hope and the other hybrid children gathered around their human and dragon families, Alex realized that this was what the future looked like. Not conquest or submission, but partnership. Not fear or mistrust, but understanding. Not separation, but synthesis. The stars above Haven's Rest had never seemed brighter, and Alex knew that tomorrow would bring the dawn of a new chapter in galactic history. A chapter written not by weapons or threats, but by love, courage, and the unshakable belief that different species could become one people while remaining true to themselves. Hope's Mental laughter echoed through the network as she played. With her hybrid siblings and their extended families, her name had proven to be prophetic, but not just for her own survival. She had become hope for an entire galaxy, learning that its greatest strength lay not in conquest but in connection.